Coming up on Lawmakers, budget briefings continue under the Gold Dome. A proposed change to Georgia's Move Over law could lead to a felony charge. And new brain fingerprinting technology gets a hearing before a Senate study committee. Those stories and more are coming up next.
This is Lawmakers, your source for all the news from under the Gold Dome. Here are your anchors, and Wandy Lawson and David Zelski.
Good evening, everyone. Also on tonight's program, Georgia Department of Transportation Commissioner Gina Abram answers questions about DOT involvement in local projects.
But first, our top story tonight. State School Superintendent Kathy Cox says that funding for Georgia's public schools is not meeting current requirements. Well, her presentation ended with questions about how the state would improve education for rural and low-income students. State School Superintendent Kathy Cox began with good news about increased graduation rates and a 2.5% pay raise for teachers. She said it's important for Georgia to maintain the teacher's status as the highest paid in the Southeast.
That might not sound important if you live in Metro Atlanta, but if you live in Valdosta, or you're over in Columbia County, or you're somewhere along the Alabama border, making sure that Georgia's teachers are the highest paid is a great incentive to make sure you've got teachers to fill your classrooms.
One area where teacher pay is tapering off is bonuses for those who earn national board certification.
I've been following this for a while. What does your specific research, your specific evaluation demonstrate that the use of this money in Georgia classrooms is a better use of money than any other merit increase like a master's in the field or any other kind of school performance enhancements?
Well, I think unfortunately what the research has shown is that money for national board certification is not making any difference in student achievement.
I appreciate you admitting that.
So that's why over the course, as you've been following this, there's been a commitment to the teachers that got it several years ago, but we've been tapering off our support of that and our encouragement of that because, quite frankly, we're not necessarily getting the results.
Superintendent Cox was also called on to answer questions about how the state would equalize funding between rural and urban school systems, particularly since the state is being sued for providing inadequate services to low-income schools. Cox said she didn't have enough information to determine how equalization grants would be distributed.
We don't know what the underlying change to the formula has been, and we're awaiting that information from OPB and to have that discussion so that we can have a better understanding as well.
Follow up, please. There were, I guess, about $110 million more were earned by school systems to level the playing field. The budget includes about $79 million for a difference of about $31 million. I mean, are we saying that you can get $31 million worth of blood out of a turnip by not funding it in the budget?
Well, I think, and again, I don't want to assume too much, because we know what happens when you do that. But as I was made aware of this situation and I began thinking about who the equalization and this reduction is impacting, it appeared to me that the goal of equalization doesn't seem to be there in you're giving money to equalize one of the wealthiest systems in the state that can raise more with a mill than a whole lot of other systems can. So from my perspective, in looking at the impact of that reduction and what school systems were going to be impacted, I looked at it and said, you know, if these school systems are getting this money, it just doesn't seem like equalization as we currently have it is still fitting the intent.
Superintendent Cox, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Mr. Chairman?
Good. Let's follow up on equalization. You said the current law is 90 percentile? Is that statute?
No, that was when it was first started. But
or
remember,
the current law, I'm sorry, is 75?
It was set at 75.
So that's
is that correct, Scott? That's in the...
And that is law. So under this budget, we're not funding it to the letter of the law. Is that correct?
There apparently is again, kind of like the I-squared legislation that's going to be forthcoming, we hear and understand that there's legislation forthcoming that would alter the equalization formula as well.
There's a lot of legislation out there, but if it doesn't pass, then the budget document is not meeting the letter of the law as it currently stands today.
I believe that that would be a correct, logical.
Because equalization now, I would have to disagree with your assessment of it because I have a personal stake in it now. But I think that we need to continue to do what we've done, and we shouldn't put budgets out there that don't meet the letter of the law, then just hoping that we're going to pass legislation, because that puts pressure on this body. If that legislation does not pass, they now have to come up with the funding so that we don't pass an illegal document. So I would hope that you would work with us on that.
New Department of Transportation Commissioner Gina Abrams spoke to the Joint House Appropriations Committee today about her plans taking over this troubled agency. Governor Perdue's budget includes $50 million to begin the State Transportation Infrastructure Bank. This would provide low-interest loans to local governments for transportation projects. Senate Majority Leader Tommy Williams began a suggestion on managing this new bank.
The one thing I would encourage you to do is what would happen in the past, and the way this funding for local assistance would get out of hand is promising when you knew you weren't going to have to deliver it. And that does not make us look good or you look good, or the department. And one of the things I always encourage my counties to do is don't come up here and ask for money till you got the right of way.
I can tell you it's been very difficult to have to say to the local governments that, you know, I'm not sure what the past commitment was, but I don't have any money to pay for it. And my job is, you know, to make sure, I can tell you from a constitutional and statutory standpoint, we have to have the money in the bank in order to sign a contract. And there's a lot of people that I like in the state, but there's nobody that I like enough to go to jail for. So I'm going to be very careful and make sure that I do my job to ensure that that we have those dollars and cents available when we make those commitments. And those dollars and cents not only have to be available, but we have to set those dollars aside so that when that commitment comes through, and we have to encumber those dollars so that that money's there. Right now we're playing a revolving game of, you know, we hope the reason we're $120 million committed on this state aid program is because we're hoping that the locals won't finish, get the projects done, and that's what we're counting on in order to fund those projects. So yes, sir, you're exactly right.
I represent 4 counties in middle Georgia, one of which is Putnam County. 3 years ago, the commissioner did just as Senator Williams suggested. The Putnam County Board of Commissioners came to Atlanta, wanted some money for a cut-through road. The commissioner said, you go acquire the right-of-way first. And they said, yes, sir. Went home, put it on the splash list. The voters in Putnam County voted to tax themselves. They raised the money. They bought all of the right-of-way. Came back to the commissioner, said, we have done as you have asked. It's about a $650,000 project, by the way. They went home, and then they got a letter from the department saying, this has been approved, proceed. 1 week after you took office, they get a fax that says this project has been inadvertently approved. Inadvertently approved. My question to you, in terms of process, cities and counties, what is it that they can count on from the department to take action?
Every contract that comes through my office, I have a form that says that Erroll, our treasurer, says the dollars are available. And these gentlemen signed the contract with me. So I can tell you that if you have a commitment like that from me, I have 3 people also standing behind me that said those dollars are available. And what we should be doing is immediately sending you a contract. We have not done that in the past. We sent you a letter that said, gosh, we'll do this. And we were counting on you not getting the right away, and we didn't send you any kind of formal commitment to those dollars. And what we're going to be doing is sending you a formal commitment letter that will encumber dollars with it.
So the projects that in the past have been promised, but there wasn't any money, but based on that promise, they already own the right-of-way. Y'all going to look at that somewhere in the
Yes,
first
sir.
or something like that?
Yes, sir. I can tell you that one of our criteria that we're looking at, and we met Friday for the first time on the detailed plan of working on state aid, and we're going to be asking for help. And I can tell you we're going to be asking for input because there's no right answer to the way we do this. But the ones that do have dollars committed, in my mind, would be the ones at the top of the list that would get funded first.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. And I apologize about that. I wish I wasn't in the spot that I'm in, but I am. And if there's anything I can do to help, I just want to be sure we're legal and we stand up to our commitments.
The Transportation Bank was just one of several suggestions from a joint study committee led by Senate Transportation Committee Chair Jeff Mullis, which met several times over the summer. Now, most DOT projects are expected to continue during the reorganization of the agency.
A Tifton state lawmaker wants to strengthen Georgia's move-over law. Lawmaker Sandra Parrish now joins us with more on that story. Sandra.
In Wadi, lawmakers passed Georgia's move-over law in 2003, requiring Georgia drivers to move over a lane or slow down for emergency vehicles on the side of the road. Violators currently face a misdemeanor, but Senator Joseph Carter wants to make it a felony in some cases. Whether it's lack of education or a plain disregard of the law, Senator Carter says Georgia's move-over law is being ignored by a large part of the driving population.
Unfortunately, the law enforcement community reports to many members of the General Assembly that people simply do not abide by that law, and that there have been many instances where they have been almost struck, and there have been a few instances where officers have been struck.
Georgia State Patrol Senior Trooper Larry Chenal agrees.
We've had many vehicles struck over the years. I don't have the particular statistics in front of me, but throughout the state, various patrol cars being rear-ended. And the key words are how many thousands of near-fatal incidents occurred.
He tells me law enforcement face a greater risk in traffic than from gun-toting criminals.
Open the patrol car, very cautious of people striking us. So many times I've had cars whip by, nearly striking me, almost hitting my pants leg.
Carter says Senate Bill 354 would be another tool for prosecutors, while at the same time a good incentive for drivers to obey the law.
If you are driving an automobile and someone dies as a result of you being DUI, fleeing or attempting to elude police, failure to stop for a school bus, or driving recklessly, then you can be charged with a felony grade vehicular homicide. This simply adds your failure to move over as required by Georgia law to that list.
Senate Bill 354 is currently in the Senate Judiciary Committee. Chairman Senator Preston Smith says he expects to hold a public hearing on the measure within a couple of weeks. Reporting live, I'm Sandra Parrish for Lawmakers.
Thank you very much, Sandra. And back to the budget briefings. Erroll Davis, Chancellor of the University System of Georgia, also went through his budget priorities and answered questions for nearly 2 hours about his financial priorities for the system. Georgia universities employ over 40,000 faculty and staff and operate on a $5.4 billion budget. One of Chancellor Davis's top priorities this year was rebuilding the nursing school in Augusta, part of an overall plan to increase the number of doctors and nurses in Georgia, which led to a question from House Majority Whip Barry Fleming.
You got as your number one recommendation $70 million in this year's budget for the new dental school, because as we know, it's really literally falling apart and full of asbestos, and we're about 5 years away from not being able to teach dental students in the state at our only dental school. So you've got $70 million in the budget this year for that dental school. The proposal the Chancellor, you and the Regents have adopted suggests that you combine the building of that dental school with a medical building and accomplish your second goal of educating more doctors in this state. So if you're going to have $70 million in this year's budget and begin to build a building that's only a dental school, you're not accomplishing the goal in your own recommendation that you combine the two and save the money state and do them all at once.
Yeah, again, I want to stress that the Regents have not adopted the recommendations of the report. They have accepted the report to inform our planning processes. And our planning processes are, in fact, addressing the issue that you have raised. And so I don't know whether I would characterize that as in our actions as inconsistent with the report that we've endorsed or accepted, because we have endorsed or we've accepted it for planning purposes. And so, again, if we take the aggressive tact of expanding to 240 in Augusta, we will in fact need that building.
when you do decide to adopt that, if you're going to adopt that, are you going to adopt it in whole or in part? And if you're going to adopt it in part, why not the other parts? Because I think if we can achieve that savings on that building right now, the medical school, then we need to be looking at it. Because you said that we can get the building's $128 million for the dental school today, correct?
Yes, that's
we're funding it at $70 million here, plus the $5 million from last year for design, so you got $75. Plus they've raised some federal money, plus they're going to try to pull some money from the dental community around the state. But they still won't get them to the $128 million. But you said we could do it at a lesser scale at about $109 million, I think.
Yes.
So we're about $20 million off from what that building should be. So maybe if we look at putting these two buildings together now, working from that angle, we actually get that full building that we need for the dental school. This is not just a request, this is a need for the dental community and for the state. Maybe we can achieve that by combining these two, and you pick up that $20 million savings that will help us get the building we need there.
If the savings are there, and I don't have any reason to dispute those savings, if we were to move forward on that building, that would represent an expenditure of about $120 million, which would certainly consume the lion's share of our capital program. This is a pressing need. But I also want to continue to stress I've got 35 other institutions with pressing needs as well, although I share with you a view that we do have a medical education crisis that we need to address in this state.
More questioning came in response to a proposal mentioned in Governor Perdue's State of the State address dealing with Fort McPherson. The fort was closed during the federal government's last round of base realignment and closure, also known as BRAC. And the governor, with the Board of Regents, has proposed a scientific research park to be developed on that 115-acre parcel.
Prior to the press conference that you had with the governor at Fort McPherson relating to this matter, were all of the regents informed of this, and did they vote to support you in that press conference with the governor relating to the presence at Fort McPherson?
The board has been made aware of Fort McPherson. We are not engaged in any expenditure of funds at the moment. We have been to a number of planning meetings to try and determine what is the best use to put forward. The BRAC process is going forward at the moment with really sort of a 50,000-foot view of how that property would be utilized, and so we really don't have a lot of specific program activities where we would be seeking approval at the moment. I believe the board has accepted the concept that this is a piece of property that we need to utilize, that the state needs to utilize from an economic perspective. It is near airports, it is near major research institutions, it is on an excellent transportation system, and so again we have participated in developing plans for a research park, but again those are quite a bit into the future at the moment.
We'd like to recommend a website that's a valuable resource for information about the Georgia General Assembly. Go to www.legis.ga.gov. That website is a great research tool we at Lawmakers use on a regular basis.
We're not your daddy's technical school. That's the slogan of the State Department of Technical and Adult Education, which began its budget presentation by introducing some of its customers.
We got down there and found out we didn't have enough aerospace workers. Because of Quick Start and what they were able to do, we took people from McDonald's, Burger King, AutoZone, Sherman-Williams, and we built the best little aircraft factory there is in the world right now.
A Boeing Corporation manager.
I'm very fortunate to be able to go through the Central Education Center and the career academies that y'all put in place, and I owe a great debt of gratitude for that opportunity.
An honors student who chose technical college over a scholarship to Georgia Tech, and the DTAE grad who drew the biggest applause, a widowed mother who earned her GED, and a medical technician certificate.
The state of Georgia has the best, and I mean the best, program in the world. It's the best thing since Wonder Bread, the adult literacy program. It really and truly is. And I stand here today as a citizen of the state of Georgia to let you know that I will do everything in my power to go and get somebody else and bring them forward and tell them, you don't have to sit here and do this. Come go with me. Let me take you to a system that can help you. Let me take you a little further so you can go a little further. The adult literacy program and the technical college program in the state of Georgia is the master key that unlocks all kinds of doors for people like myself and for others, no matter what their financial situation, no matter where they live. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even discriminate against you. It doesn't matter if you're driving a Volkswagen or a BMW. This system doesn't care. It cares about the person. And I'm thankful to you, state of Georgia, for caring about the person and meeting the needs of all people like myself. Thank you. God bless you and continue doing a wonderful job.
It was a heartwarming way to introduce the $373 million DTAE budget, which includes $10 million in administrative costs, $16 million for adult literacy, $16.3 million for economic development, and $330 million for technical education. The lion's share of questions, however, were about the department's plans for new building and renovation.
We see two projects passed over, Atlanta Technical College and Southwest Georgia Technical College. I guess I have more interest in the Southwest Georgia Technical College than I do Atlanta.
I suspect you do.
But we see those passed over. They're about $17 million, and we see $29 million in projects added that were not on the 09 capital outlay budget. Can you shed some light on that for me, please?
Well, we have, one of the challenges that 3 years ago when Commissioner Vollmer and I came to the technical colleges and the DTAE, our prioritization process was remarkably fuzzy at that point in time. And our state board has endeavored to go to great lengths, and we have built a process where we winnow down the requirements and the need for these buildings in a very aggressive way on the staff. And we only bring about 20 projects a year now to the state board to even consider for prioritization.
The DTAE is sponsoring legislation this year to change the agency name to the Technical College System of Georgia, a name the interim commissioner says will better convey its 21st century goals. The final appropriations presentation today came in the early evening from the State Court of Appeals, which warned that a $500,000 shortfall in its current budget could have dire results.
Now, as a result of the fiscal year 2008 budget cuts, the court has a $500,000 shortfall for 2008 fiscal year. And over 90% of our budget is people costs. Unless emergency funds are restored in the supplemental budget process, the court will not have sufficient funds to operate through the end of this fiscal year.
Judge Barnes also lobbied in support of House Bill 119 to raise salaries for appeals court judges. And the Prosecuting Attorneys Council request to purchase a book that costs over $100,000 raised the eyebrows of Representative Judy Manning.
Is this book for $114,000? I mean, how big a book is it?
Are you talking about the Daniels criminal trial practice?
Do they not already
about
have
that
one?
thick.
Do they not already have one?
Well, they update it every year, and we don't do this every year. We try to do it every other year.
Is it available online?
Not free, no. Matter of fact, I believe you have to have a subscription before you can go into it online.
So you can't just get the update?
You can't just no. They send out a whole new book.
Maybe we need to write our own book.
Well, maybe we do.
Thank you.
People quit changing laws. I wasn't going to say that, Chairman Martin, but that's part of it. And that's just not the legislature. That's the courts of appeals and the Supreme Court are included in those changes.
Now, Senator Vincent Fort and the Grady Coalition held a rally today outside of the New World of Coca-Cola during the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce legislative reception. The purpose? To push for state funding of Grady Memorial Hospital. That event just wrapped up, and lawmakers Keosha Jackson will have more on that story tomorrow.
Supporters of a new technology that may help catch criminals faster demonstrated equipment before a Senate study committee today. Lawmakers Minoo Hosseini has more.
Brain fingerprinting was created by Dr. Lawrence A. Farwell, who likens the system to DNA fingerprinting. This new technology displays sounds, images, or words irrelevant to the crime while incorporating in evidence from the crime scene. Using a brainwave response, the test has two possible results: information present or information absent.
Brain fingerprinting is a means of preserving civil liberties, which can be very useful in situations where we want to find out the truth in a non-invasive way and a non-stressful way for the person who's being interrogated, which has been a big problem with the national government.
But the Georgia Bureau of Investigation was skeptical of the technology's novelty.
We would look at this as something that we would use in day-to-day GBI operations only after it had been vetted at the federal level, that the pilot studies had been done, that established that field testing, that established that track record, so that we could look at a family when we're working a criminal case and explain to them that brain fingerprinting is not something new technique that we're going to experiment with on their case.
Dr. Farwell says that brain fingerprinting offers as another crime-fighting tool, but it cannot solve a crime on its own. The technology matches evidence with people present at the scene of the crime, but it cannot determine the difference between a witness and a perpetrator. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Minoo Hosseini.
And that study committee hopes to make a recommendation on the technology by the end of the month.
Earlier in our program, we heard from new DOT Commissioner Gina Abrams about her immediate plans to reorganize the agency. However, last week, Senate Transportation Chairman Jeff Mullis discussed a few plans that are on the drawing table, one dealing with evaluating the state motor fuel tax.
The amount of motor fuel tax that we receive from gasoline currently is more than ever before, but yet the cost of doing transportation is higher than the fundings that we're getting from the motor fuel tax. Land acquisition, as well as cost of material because of the cost of petroleum products, has risen the cost tremendously. So that will no longer keep up with the demand of transportation needs or projects. And in order for us to fund it more efficiently, we're going to have to come up with new, innovative ways that doesn't increase taxes on the Georgia citizen.
Well, coming up tomorrow on Lawmakers, Speaker of the House Glenn Richardson reveals his legislative agenda and budget briefings conclude. On the schedule to address the Joint Committee tomorrow are Human Resources, Community Health, Corrections, Juvenile Justice, and the Office of Planning and Budget. We'll have information from those briefings and all the latest Capitol news tomorrow night at 7 p.m. If you've missed any part of this Lawmakers broadcast, tune in tomorrow morning when Lawmakers repeats at 5:30 a.m. You can also keep up with all the action under the Gold Dome daily on your local GPB radio station during Morning Edition, All Things Considered, and evenings at 6 p.m. on Georgia Gazette. Now stay tuned for Secrets of New York. Tonight's episode explores secrets of the subway, New York above and below. That program's coming up next here on GPB.
And that is our broadcast for this, the second day of the 2008 budget briefings. I'm David Zelski.
And I'm Wandy Lawson. Have a great evening.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.